Hello, let's get started. Share. You're looking at TryHackMe's Advent of Cyber. Close. Close. Let's see. All right, so window. Yesterday, I think we played a little bit of catch up. I think we had only done, or I'd only done like 1 through 4, and I worked through 5, 6, and 7. So today we're going to look at day 8, which says networking, what's under the Christmas tree. So it's another networking. Let's see, what does it say? I'm supposed to deploy something. Okay, let's do that. We also have to get connected. So let's go to our machine. Kali. Now there's a whole room that walks you through how to connect to the private network that is hosted by TryHackMe. And they give you what they call like a connection pack, I think. And it is just basically the VPN credentials. So I use OpenVPN to connect to that. Here in a second, it should come back. So let's see. It says, right now it says I'm not connected. Any luck, when I refresh, it should say connected. Or at least shows my internal IP address on the TryHackMe network. So let's see. After a few months of probation, intern Elf McEagers passed with glowing feedback from Elf McSkitty. Let's zoom in a bit. Eek. So, Skitty, I'd like to agree. Good idea. Trying to tell her, no idea how to begin finding out information from new responsibilities. Using Nmap. Okay. So we're going to be exploring the use of Nmap in our information gathering stage to build a picture of the services running on a remote computer and to understand how these may be useful to use. Okay. So Nmap is a tool to create a network network map. So one of the industry standards, everyone should have in the toolkit. Cool. So host discovery, vulnerability discovery, service and application discovery. So this has a multitude of uses. Again, a network administrator might just use it to find out what IP addresses are being utilized on the network. A pen tester might use it to find out what versions of software happen to be vulnerable to certain types of attacks. Nmap's very broad in its use case. So it's not just sort of a hacker tool or an attacker tool. It is something that everyone, just a general network administrator, sort of uses. In my mind, when I say I'm going to look at a network, that's kind of like my first tool. So I say, oh, okay, let me just run an Nmap real quick, get a quick scan of this network to see what's out there. So TCP scanning. Okay, so they're just giving you a breakdown here of like how computers start to communicate. This is very important. This is something we talk about in some of our professional developments. It's like the importance of understanding the rules that a computer is required to follow if it wants to have an effective communication. And what's cool about Nmap is that it uses or abuses those rules to sort of glean like additional information about the state of a computer. So if a computer is like following the rules appropriately, that is to say, if it's adhering to the protocol that is TCP, it's going to get this SYN ACK, or it's going to SYN, and then you'll get a SYN ACK, and then you get an ACK back. that is indicating whether or not a port is open. If it gets to this reset, this TCP reset, then that's telling you that the remote end is closed. And if there's some other state that's being modified in the way, this is going to like maybe there's a firewall or something in place. So that is that's basically what this little section is telling you about. All right, and so I think Nmap has the ability to abuse those rules. So we're just kind of looking at that. They're giving you a little bit of an introduction into what this stuff does or how it works. The timing templates are interesting. It's good to know. Aggressiveness, 6 profiles. So it's important to sort of keep track of here. It's like if you are an adversary, and you're breaking into some place, the more noise you're making, the more attention you're drawing to yourself, right? And so these timing templates and timing profiles, T0 is like being very sneaky, walking very slowly, not dragging your feet. T5 is kind of sprinting and like knocking stuff over along the way. I mean, and like going through drawers quickly, right? Doing it as much as you can, as quickly as you can. So that's, I mean, I think by default it starts, at T3. If I'm trying to do something quickly, if I'm just like, if I own the network, I can, and I don't mind potentially damaging the small network, I go as fast as I can. I think T3 is, they say it's generally kind of polite. If you're, again, they're pointing out here, if you're in a lab environment, you can use a faster timing profile. You're going to get likely the same results, but it's just going to be quicker. Okay, so they're talking to Nmap scripting engine. Like up top, they kind of go over a little bit, like you can do not just host discovery, that is to say scanning for just what IP addresses on the network, but what services, and if those services might be vulnerable to any like common attacks. And so the scripting engine is a way to sort of leverage that process. So it says here there's 600 scripts. We can go to their website. Okay. So I'm going to hit Dhcp Discover. What is this? Okay. So they have a bunch of information that sort of gives you a bunch of additional checks to find out maybe more detailed information rather than just, UDP port 67 happens to be open and listening. Again, we understand that just because something's on port 80 does not mean that it's running HTTP. These scripting tools, the scripting engine, might give you that kind of detailed information that you could expect. So definitely investigate what this is. It looks like, take for example, looks like they're walking you through a little bit of an example for like how to invoke Nmap with a particular script in mind. If I remember correctly, there's also a way to sort of like Hail Mary or like shotgun a bunch of scripts. I think if we go back here, there was like discovery and safe. I think you can run whole categories against whole categories of scripts against a particular host or a suite of hosts. Okay. So I think it said by default earlier, like up top, it said that by default, Nmap uses a SYN scan. And if you're an unprivileged user, it'll use like a full, what they call like a full TCP connect. So that's what's interesting about computers. Like a lot of times you'll need to be an administrator or root in order to like truly get at the guts of the operating system, such that you could abuse the protocol, such that you could, kind of, lie about what state your connection or what point in time your connection is actually at. So Nmap-A when I go through this with folks, I always say Nmap gives you everything. It gives you all, or Nmap TAC A gives you all the information. It's a big job. Use a big A. That gives you, I think, operating system version, software version. I think it may do a full TCP connect scan or might do a send scan, actually. Don't think about it. On all of the top, I think, 1,000 ports according to Nmap. So this is like a good little cheat sheet to have like reference for. This -P says I want to scan port 22. I think it assumes port TCP by default. This is good like shorthand to know that you can scan not just the top 1,000, but you can sort of do an exhaustive search of all 65,000 ports by using this TAC-P TAC. And this is useful for something that might be running, like if you have a web server that you are investigating and you know that it exists on the machine, but it's not on port 80 or port 443 or port 5,000 or 8,000, 8080 or something. This is guaranteed. I say guaranteed. It's going to try all the ports to get whatever's behind them, right? To try to initiate a connection. -SV, again, versioning things. So this is interesting. It says defending against Nmap scans. Oh, this is what we were talking about. Okay. So it says just because something's running on, like SSH normally runs on port 22, doesn't mean that it has to run on that port. And the act of changing that is sometimes referred to as like security through obscurity. It's an obscure piece of information that you would have to know in order to try to connect to the SSH server running on that port. Okay, so they're giving you an introduction to pfSense. That's really cool. pfSense is a firewall / router, appliance. It can be like either a physical router, like a piece of hardware on your desk, or you can actually even run it in like a virtual environment as well. And I think the way that they're using it, they are talking about pfSense and the emerging threats like rule list is to sort of have it configured as an intrusion detection system or IDS. What emerging threats is a list of like known indicators of bad actors, right? So it's known malicious IP addresses, known malicious domains, known malicious byte sequences that might occur in like a novel infection. So some bad guys out there have written some malware that is going to ransomware a hospital. Well, if somebody witnesses this and they can sort of extract those indicators, they can commit that information to emerging threats. I don't remember who makes it, but Proofpoint. Okay. Well, anyway, they give that information over to them, and then that little bit of information can help protect or sort of vaccinate, if you will, large parts of the world if they have some intrusion detection or intrusion prevention system in place. And that's what Snort and Suricata are. And okay, so I guess the reason they have pfSense is because it has really tight integration with Snort and Suricata. So it's easy to have both of those applications sort of bundled into the same device that is the pfSense firewall, which is where you would want to do your detection and blocking, or that is to say the IDS, the detection, and the prevention, the IPS, is at the firewall. And I guess we're talking about this because they're saying that you can defend against Nmap. Okay, so apparently you can, through some of those emerging threat rules or through the IDS rule sets, you can detect someone sort of going through and scanning your network really quickly. It looks like they're calling out in particular like high timing profiles. So that's cool. They said even with the timing template of 3, that's the default, I think they said. After 6 alerts, in this case, the attacker has been blocked by the firewall. Oh, so that's interesting. Very cool. Okay, so here's our challenge. We did this a few minutes ago. It said, deploy and use Nmap to scan the instance of the network. Take note of the IP address that you will need to scan, machine IP, and enumerate it for Elf McEager. Okay. Okay, so let's try to follow along. Well, first of all, I've already forgotten the IP address, so I'm going to copy that. Boom. And they're saying we need to add something to our Etsy host file. What that means is, so there's this thing, DNS. DNS is the domain name services. It allows you to sort of associate a host name with an IP address. And what this does, this Etsy host file is like the first place it goes to check. Before it goes and asks your internet service provider, who is, what did they say, TFCD, something like that. Before you go and ask the internet for like who is this, website, check this Etsy host file. It's a way for you to sort of reduce unnecessary network like calls to DNS. As a malware analyst, it's actually a way for you to intercept, potentially intercept, traffic that's destined towards a domain that you don't control typically. If you know that a piece of malware is trying to get out to, www.badguy.com, you don't own the IP address that is 54.13.whatever, but you do own something that's in your network. So you can point, www.badguy.com to some IP address that you have set up for analysis to try to monitor all the connections that are made to it. So hit X. So I save that. So if I ping, okay, it looks like I'm able to effectively communicate with that machine via a host name as opposed to via a just an IP address. So before I would be able to do ping.10.10.100.18. Awesome. Okay, so now it's like a little shorthand. So I can just ping TFBC. CFFC, TBFC. Oh, real quick, just I guess to sort of really drive the point home, so I can say 1.1.1.1 AR CS.rocks. So if I ping ARC.rocks, right, I can type in whatever website and sort of fake or simulate a response from it. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that. Control K, text, boom. Okay, so what was the next thing they asked me to do? So here, I guess they're walking you through that. When was Snort created? Okay. Did it tell us up here? Or is this something we have to Google? Okay, so this is an excellent opportunity for you to go and research, on your own what Snort is. But we got flags to capture. So let's find Firefox. I'm gonna go to the Wikipedia entry for Snort. Wikipedia Snort software, 1998. is what I saw. Somewhere in there. Okay, so back here. Let's guess. 908. All right, so that was correct. Okay, so it says using Nmap on our IP address, our target IP address. What are the port numbers of the 3 services running? Please provide your answer in ascending. That is to say, lowest to highest, separated by comma. So, how do we run it now? Zoomed in. So, in the new Callies, you have to. You're running as a standard user or non-administrative user. So, you usually want to preface things with sudo. Sudo nmap tf pbfc blog. So they kind of gave us some information earlier, right? They gave us this little like cheat sheet that sort of gives us common flags to try, right? Flags are just parameters to the program. So -a, I know that that's going to give me like a bunch of information, all the information I can get out of it. O is going to give me a bunch of information. -p is telling me what ports I want to try to scan. Because it's a CTF, I think things are more likely than not to be on non-standard ports. So when I do this TAC, I'm saying start at 0, go all the way up to 65,535. Those are the valid port numbers that you can connect to with a computer. All of this information is very useful. There's a way to save it, and I forget what it is. Is it -OA? How do you OA in maps? All right, so what I'm doing real quick is making a directory called nmaps. If I cd nmaps, then again, nmaps are like network maps, right? That's the name of the tool. I can see if I run ls, there's nothing in there. And I'm going to call this day 8. So I think it's -OA. I want to output this information, not just put it on the screen, but I also want to save it in a file. I think the -A gives me all of the available output formats. They give you XML, just regular text that you kind of see on the screen. They give you a greppable format, which we can look at here in a second. Basically, this is just a way for me to save the results of the scan. That way I don't have to, I can open it up in some other tool that's maybe better suited. If there's a lot of results, there's maybe another tool is better suited to sort of help sift through that information. So I'm gonna hit enter. You might have to type your password if you've not run sudo there. So yeah, that's what happened. So -OA, it created this Gnmap, which I guess is greppable. Nmap is, which means like all the information is going to show up on one line. This is more like the way that shows up on the screen, and then this is XML, so you could use it to import into like some other tool, which is maybe a little. It's just a different way to store information, XML. So now Nmap is super useful, but I didn't do a couple of things. I didn't use a timing profile, so right now it's running probably kind of slow. I think if I hit the space bar, it gives me an update. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel it and just speed things up because I didn't do the TV magic thing. T5 is gonna be like a fast timing profile, as fast as it'll go. So, whoop. Actually, hold on, I messed that up too. It's complaining here because this parameter is expecting a folder or a file to save stuff as, and I didn't do that. I gave it a -T5. So that's what it's complaining about. Now I'm saying I want to do timing profile of 5 and run. And it should just overwrite whatever's in this folder. And it seems like they use this domain a lot. So that's why I put day 8 on the end of it. So I would know that if for some reason day 9 is the same domain. I will have that. So it's going to run through its send stealth scan. That's when it violates the three-way handshake or the rules of typical TCP communication. SYN waits for a SYN-ACK. If it gets a SYN-ACK, then that means that, yes, it's a valid host, or I'm sorry, a valid connection. Otherwise, it's going to do something else. There's other flags that we should probably throw in here as well. I think like -pn, which is to not ping the host, because there are some computers, like a lot of Windows computers, if you're on a public network, they're not configured to respond to pings by default, but they might be open to exchanging files with you, for instance. And so that's an instance where you might want to like ignore the result of the ping sweep, which happens kind of beforehand. So it says it's about 15% done. I'm just hitting the space bar periodically because I'm impatient. So. Is really should have done some like TV magic and like started the scan before I started talking about everything. It's a third of the way done. So I guess we can sort of maybe step ahead and maybe there's something else we can do. Answer-wise while that's running kind of in the background. Dang it. Yeah, they did tell us. Run a scan to provide -pn to ignore the ICMP being used to determine if the host is up. So that's kind of what I was talking about a second ago. It says one undergoing SYN stealth scan. There's ways that you can kind of speed things up because it might not respond to it. So it says that we can just hit completed because there's no answer needed. I didn't do it, so there's that. It says compare the outputs -A versus -SV. -A will run some of the Nmap scripting engine stuff against it, if I'm not mistaken. So you get that more detailed information that we were kind of looking at through, I don't know, this thing. So this is the more detailed, what am I saying? The more detailed like Nmap scripting engine output, right? So that one was for Bitcoin. Let's see. Broadcast ping. Yeah, I guess that doesn't really. There's just a bunch of stuff on here. So this will check for a Git repository on a web server. So that's kind of interesting. Where did it? I just saw something interesting. Okay. 364. So here's an example also of VMware path vulnerability. So this is an old vulnerability. It's from 2009. It's over a decade ago. But there was apparently some path traversal vulnerability that this thing was able to not only identify as potential vulnerability, but maybe validate for you to say that yes, it is vulnerable or it's not vulnerable, or more of a just confirmation for you, I guess. So they show you how to basically run or invoke those. Gosh, this thing is 82%. Okay. So what other tasks did they give us? Okay, so this is CTF, just metagaming again. It says use Nmap to determine the name of the Linux distribution that's running, what's reported as the most likely distribution running. I'm going to guess that it's Ubuntu or Debian, just based on the number of letters there. Yeah, that's correct. Just a guess. We're going to see in the output what's actually, like, what's really real about that output. It'll give us a serious estimation of what it thinks is the best guess for the operating system. I was just seeing if there's anything different for some reason in the Gnmap version. What Tail is doing is just looking, like, every time something is added to that file, it's going to show it on the screen for me. It's like, watch the tail end of this file. Kind of think of it like that. Experiment with different settings such as -A and -SV while comparing the outputs. We'll do that, and we'll speed this up too in a future scan, such that we don't have to wait for 10 minutes. It'd be great if nothing ended up actually getting saved to these files. That would be super convenient. Okay. All right, so that was the end. You'll notice that if I hadn't spammed the space bar, that was the end of the SynStealth scanning. And then it went on to doing like traceroute and doing some other stuff as well. So you see two things happen. This right-hand side of the screen sort of filled up with a bunch of information really quickly, and then this left-hand side kind of did the same thing. Let's see what's common about them and what's different and why any of that matters. Okay. So right here, we can see that this like the output of this file, this tbfc day8.nmap is what you're seeing on the screen over here. It just is a way for you to save all this information. If for some reason I, cleared my screen, then like I wasn't able to scroll up, or if I accidentally closed the window or my machine crashes or something, I wouldn't have to run that scan again. That's why you want to save your scans. It's important to understand that that stuff is only as good as its recency, but it's still useful to have. So they told us a couple of things. What did they say? One of the tasks was to find the open ports. So there's a couple of different columns here in the as you start adding versioning to your scans, they show you not just the port, whether it's the port number and it's UDP or TCP. They show you that. They show you the state. That's the say it's best guess. Generally, it only shows you like open things. I think there's ways for you to show like all the closed ports as well. That might be when you're explicitly searching for ports. So if I were to say port, or that is to say TAC-P 2280 443, right? It might show that 22 is closed if it's not actually running something on port 22. In addition to that, it makes a guess at the service. That is to say, the protocol that port is operating on under. In this context, it's running the HTTP protocol, right? And there's software which implements that protocol, and it's saying that it's Apache HTTPD, and then some version number, which is very useful for us. This whole column is useful, and it gives us this other bit of information, Ubuntu as the operating system that is likely running on. This version string is something that the server offers up to its client so that it knows maybe there's a more efficient way for me to communicate with you. Part of that might be expressed in the protocol HTTP as well. So you notice there's all these pipe symbols and kind of like arrows pointing like almost like bullets or subpoints. It says HTTP generator, HTTP server header, HTTP title. Some of these things are more about the information that's being exchanged, and just again additional information about what's hosting certain things up. So Apache is a web server. Hugo is a web framework, right? So a web framework is something that a developer would use to make their life easier as website designers or makers. And so like Hugo, I think, is a Go framework for building websites. And so Apache is probably acting as a proxy. Hugo web framework. Oh, it's a static site generator. Okay. My fault. So, okay. Well, it's docs. Thought it was written in Go. Yeah. Okay. Hugo uses Go HTTP template. Okay. So apparently it's a static site. We didn't even actually, now that we know it's a website, we can like go and visit it. So what was it? It was tfbc.blog. Dang it. Right here, copy. Okay. So it says, this is the internal blog. So actually, I guess maybe there's not. So it's not acting as a proxy. It's actually just serving up whatever Hugo produced, which is just the HTML files for this website. The title is, I think what you're witnessing right here. Next, we see that 2222 is running, it's open, its state is open, and it's running SSH. The version is OpenSSH 7.6 P1. Again, the server is telling you what platform it's running because maybe that's useful to the client. Next, we see 3389 is open, and its best guess is this MSWBT server. When you see 3389, a lot of times that's Windows Remote Desktop. But in this instance, it's saying it's guess for the version is XRDP or, you know, a Linux-based implementation of the remote desktop protocol, meant for like maybe interoperability between Windows network and a Linux device. So as operating system guesses. Now this is all actually derived from how the computer is communicating, not what's being communicated. This is an instance of what is being communicated, this OpenSSH Ubuntu string or Apache Ubuntu string. That's something that's, you know, explicitly stated in the code there. However, the way this is like operating system fingerprinting, the way that this actually works is maybe the Linux kernel version 3.1 takes just 10 milliseconds longer to respond than the newer Linux kernel 3.2, right? Maybe all, you know, ASUS wireless access points, you know, that are running 3.4 respond with a certain set of packets, you know, or they respond in a certain way if you start to poke and prod them in the right way. So that's really what this is doing. It's just a really methodical way of figuring out what is this device likely going to be based on, you know, how it reacts to your probes from the network. So, so where am I at? Boom. Let's answer this question. It said 80, 2222, and 3389, right? 80, 2222, 3389. Submit. Got that correct. All right, so real quick, I think the scan that I ran right here, ways to speed this up. I don't have to scan all the ports. I think I can scan, by default, I think it scans the top 1,000. If I type TAC F for fast, it's going to scan the top 100 of that top 1,000. So that's not ports like, what is it? Does it go like this? It's not the top like sequential ports. There's going to be it's like sort of based on commonality in the network. So let's look at Nmap TAC F. Fast. They're not giving us the right answers that I'm looking for. The point is that rather than doing 1,000 ports, it's going to do, or in this instance, rather than doing all 65,000 ports, it's going to do just 100 ports. I'm going to save those results as fast, and I'm going to run it with the fast timing profile again. And then rather than doing -A, I'm going to do -s for the scan type, and I want to use capital V for version. So I'm going to hit enter. And I had to type my password again because my sudo session timed out. Let's come here. So you can see that right there, it ran in 16 seconds. The entire thing went across 16 seconds, so much faster, but we are missing certain results, right? We're missing port 2222, right? So because that's not that common, so they've kind of effectively hidden that service from us, right? By being able to run it on a non-standard port. And because we were impatient, we ran a fast scan, yada, yada. There's that. We didn't get all of our results. So we might, if that were vulnerable, we might not know that it was vulnerable. So catch. Yeah, we got the same results in the text file. If we look at the Gnmap, you can see that it's there. It just is formatted differently. it's all in one line, and you can use that to search for things. It's for more like programmatic type access to it. XML is the same thing. So let's see. What do we have to add? Oh, to retrieve the HTTP title. Okay, we didn't actually do that. So let's. So the way that you can invoke a script is you can type tac script, and then HTTP. You can't do tab completion. It's HTTP -title. I don't know. Say I don't know what it is. I'm going to go up and, because I don't know what it is, it's easy for me to say that I don't know what it is. But here, Nmap, HTTP -title. They're going to give me an example of how to run that command. Apparently, it's one of the default ones. So we already have that result. Let's see if this works. Yeah. So I can say -- script, and then the specific script that I want to run. And you can see that on port 80, it found, oh, that's interesting. We have a different result now for this, the service, Ethernet IP -1. Huh. Well, we told it to look for, HTTP results, and this is how it interpreted that string. Interesting. So here it is. There's a result of that content. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy it, selection, back over here. Scrolling. Oh, dang it. All right, well, we didn't even have to read anything. It says, based on the return value, what do we think this website might be used for? Well, if we look at the answer again, there's 4 letters, blog. So I'm going to hit submit. That seemed to have been it. They use different scripts to discover any further information about them. Because we use the -a, we kind of ran all the scripts we can run, I think. That's not true. That's not true at all, actually. We'll leave that as an exercise to the readers. There's a ton of different scripts you can run for Nmap. Super useful. Here's just, well, an exhaustive list of them. This is all of them that come packaged with Nmap by default. There's other resources, though, like maybe some private scripts that people haven't made publicly available, or at least aren't merged into the mainline Nmap distribution. So, there's that to consider for like newer vulnerabilities or something like that. So let us, I think at this point we can say completed, and we've, I guess, finished day 8, an hour into it. Cool deal. All right, well, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.